Hi, welcome to Foreigner in the Philippines. One subject that never seems to, it should be dead but it won't lie down. I say dead in that you would think you can't add anything more to it than has been already said, and that is money and how far it goes in the Philippines. So Beth is at the back there editing, and she says, do a video on the real, what have I read? The real cost of living in the Philippines. And I can tell you that any account that you have on this will be like answering the question, how long is a piece of string? Well, how long is it? How are you going to live is the real question. And depending on how you live and where you live, then the costs will be different. People constantly ask, what's the average cost of one of the houses that you build? And it's impossible to give an average. It can vary so much. I mean, obviously you could, yes, I'm sure that if you're into math you could add them all up and then divide by the first number you thought of and you get the average. I'm sure that you can do that, but in trying to work out that you need to account for so many things. Where is it? Is it one room or two rooms? Is it one bedroom? Is there a kitchen? Is there a bathroom? There's just so many. What are the materials? Is it going to be a concrete house? Is it going to be half hollow block and then the rest in wood framing, a tin roof? What exactly is the location? How difficult is it to get materials to it? So it's almost impossible. A house that we could build for say 60,000 might cost us 150,000 if it were somewhere else. For instance, you might, if you've looked at any of the videos of the houses that we built, you'll know that we built some houses in pretty impossible locations where they really are difficult to get the materials to. In some the materials had to be carried for the last quarter or half a mile because you simply couldn't get any vehicle up there, not even the little red, which went almost everywhere. But then there'll be some element of, well, it passes through a piece of land which the people don't want a truck being driven through. So it's very, very difficult. Now, with the cost of living, which is the all-embracing amount, which would take in whether you were living on land which you owned and there was a house there already, whether you were renting, whether you were in town, whether you were out in the countryside. These are all factors in there as well. For instance, you go into, I wrote down Jollibee, one chicken piece and rice will cost, I think, maybe 105 pesos. Well, work it out, that's $2. But after a while you stop thinking in terms of dollars because you don't live dollars. You may get them on your pension, but you don't live them. So there's a meal. Now, if you went into a Candelaria, that's in a nice new, everything beautifully done, everything wonderfully clean, all purified water. They wouldn't know, there's no risk on water, either in what they clean, in what they wash, or all of it is like a McDonald's. Everything has a rigid standard for which you would do. Whether the food is nutritious or not is another thing. But you could go down in the Candelarias where they're 15-watt bulbs and you hardly can see, and you can eat a meal for $1. quite possibly less. Because if you just have rice and one, what they call one dish. A dish is something that has some kind of meat in it, or fish, or something that is the taste to the plain rice. Things are very different here, even on eating out. For instance, people used to go into Alturas and they would go to the cafeteria and they might buy the dish only, and they would bring in their own rice. Can you imagine that, going into any other place and having food that you bought outside, like, what was that comedian who used to say that he felt in a really, really naughty mood, he would go into Jollibee and shout, "McDonald's!" See, now it's different. My mother would never go into the place where we were allowed to get our food on, well, back in the UK they call it tick. You get the thing on tick and you run up, but in America you would run up a tab. Everyone has their own different ways, but she would never go into I think his name was Kershaw or something like that. She would never go into the grocery stores, Kershaw's, because they allowed us to have tick, which we desperately needed in the middle of the week, and she wouldn't go in there with a bag which had the name of another store on it. She could never do that. Here you can actually take food into a restaurant. If we really wanted to, we could go into Vedastel and have our meal, and if the kids wanted to have Jollibee, they could go down to Jollibee and bring the Jollibee back and sit at the table and eat their Jollibee. It's different. But for what you would be charged for, say, renting a house, you rent a house. I know that Alfred rents his house for something like 2,500. Somebody else that we know rents, and that's a very basic house that he had to paint the inside and do a lot of work just to make it right. No running water, and so very basic. Now, our other friend, who is married to an expat and Filipina, and they pay 7,500, and they have a very nice terraced house on 2 floors, and a lot of accommodation, a very nice living room, a little room at the back which would technically be a maid's room, and a nice kitchen, I think two toilets, something very nice. 7,500 pesos. Work that out at 51 to the dollar. So it depends on the lifestyle very, very much. It must depend on the lifestyle, because when people say to me, "Can you live on $500 a month?" I say, well, there are families out there with 2, 3 and 4 children who are living on half that. So what's your lifestyle? And I know that there are people who live out in Panglao and they rent a place out there and they might be paying 25,000 pesos. Completely unheard of for Beth and I. Would never even dream of thinking in those terms. Can you say, come out here and look for a place, and while you're looking, can you find a room to rent in a hotel, pension house? Pension house is what they call them here. So in a pension house, I know that when Alfred came out here at first, he was paying about 500 pesos for a room, and he got what he paid for, but he was able to stay there. other people that will come out and they stay at somewhere that's much nicer than that, and they'll pay 12 or 1400 pesos for a room, and it will have AC, and it will be much nicer than that basic room, which probably had a bed and a cabinet in it and no AC. If you need that, then that's what you actually pay for. Now, gas is quite expensive, I think, for where we are. I think that for diesel we pay about 45 pesos for a litre. It's in litres, the same as in the US now. So I can't even think in litres. It doesn't make any sense to me any more than the millimeters and things. I'm still old-fashioned, thinking feet and inches and miles. That's miles and yards and miles, and that's how I think. But if you're coming out here and you want to live in the same kind of style as you lived, say, in America or in the UK or wherever, anywhere out in the West, you will be able to do it. But if you're coming out here like I did, where I just couldn't afford to live in America, I had my 2 little pensions, and when I lost everything and employment went out the window, I couldn't afford to live on that, and so I decided that I would come out here, not to stay in the Philippines. I was going to go and travel on and perhaps see Thailand, and well, as you know, lots of things change. But I came out here because here I could live modestly. Before I met Beth, I lived in Mabalacat, which is close, a few miles from Angeles, and Angeles is where Clark Air Base used to be, now Clark Airport, I believe it's still called. And I lived in a brand new apartment, and the apartment had 2 bedrooms and a living room with it, which included a kitchen, and it also had a bathroom. And so it was actually very nice. It was considered expensive by the friends that I'd made there who were Filipino, and they said, well, 6,000, well, that's expensive. It wasn't expensive to me. I thought it was pretty good because it was brand new, everything just beautifully done, and everything worked, and I didn't need 2 bedrooms, but it had 2 bedrooms. So I lived quite well then. I took my laundry down to a place that was just around the corner. I put it into the car. I had the Volkswagen. I put it into that and take it round there, and they would do it for the next day and charge me very little. Got my hair cut for under $1, and I used to go and eat breakfast at a Candelaria, which was on the main road, and I would go there. They got used to me, and used to have my breakfast how I liked it, which is really how it is right now. If I go down to Vedasto, I like salt and vinegar with my French fries, and they do that, and they even toast my bread both sides. Had to remind them of that, but yes, that's what they do. So everything. And let me see, what's my let me see what my breakfast: 2 eggs, French fries, which I like, and 2 wheat toast with jam and with a little slab of butter, and that costs me under $4. Seems reasonable to me. And I usually go down there on a Sunday in between picking up and dropping off the kids back home, and I go down there and I meet with my friend Michael, who's from Manchester, where I was born too, and we sit and talk Manchester, and it's very pleasant. Okay, well, I got on talking too much again. Thanks for listening in. I think the rule of thumb is that if you come out here and you're really determined to be out here, you will find a way to live within your means. That's the real answer about the cost. You can't get something that's going to cost you 2,000 pesos, or you can pay up to 25,000 or more if you want something that's on the beach and got 3 bedrooms and fully air conditioned, and it's really up to you. Thanks for looking in. Don't forget to comment if you can. Bye for now.